Alrighty, go live. All right, everybody, we are live and good to go. Claire, do you want to take that away?
Yeah, sure thing. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining for our June SAI seminar. I know I'm not usually the one that kicks us off, but I'm excited to welcome everybody here today. My name is Claire Holzalski, and I am the Communications Officer at SAI. And for those who aren't super familiar with us, we are an incubator that provides access to research, infrastructure, community, training, and funding to accelerate the building of tools, programs, and initiatives that strengthen the access and connection between science and society. Today, we are excited to have Don Stanley join us and talking about creating successful, keyword there, successful, strategic communication plans. I know Don from my time spent at UW-Madison, where he is an award-winning faculty member and teaches courses on social media and digital marketing. This is also when I feel obligated to shout out to the Don Fund, which I'm hoping he will explain in his presentation today as well.
First contribution.
And also, in addition to being a phenomenal instructor, he is an internationally recognized digital marketing and sales coach, university speaker, and educator. And as the co-founder of a Wisconsin-based 3 Rhino Media, he has personally guided a wide array of clients from Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, startups, nonprofit organizations, and solo entrepreneurs. During his 20 plus years in the business and in higher education, he has worked with hundreds of businesses and thousands of students, in which he will talk about more today. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Don.
Well, it is great to be here. Appreciate everybody taking the time to join in. I'd really like to make this as valuable as possible for you all. So feel free to ask questions as we're going along. We'll have time for questions at the end as well, but if you want to throw something in the chat. And I'm going to share a deck with you, and we'll walk through the deck. You all can have access to the deck if you'd like. And the idea here is what I want to do is give you, and everybody can see the deck okay? We got to make sure, okay. The idea here is that, and we just went over that. The one thing that was not included in that intro, thank you, Claire, very much, is dog lover. So I'm up north dog sitting right now. So I've got another dog in the background. But actually, working with dogs was what got me into science communication, because I started, I had a weird transitions in life that led me to the UW-Madison. Got an opportunity to work with wild wolves. While working with wild wolves, got an opportunity to understand that wolf recovery had very little to do with the science, and it had a lot to do with how the science was communicated. I grew up in the heart of an urban area in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so people in Milwaukee didn't care about a lot of these issues because they weren't salient. So so dogs actually have led me to a lot of like, how do we think about communicating effectively? Because ideas are great, but like when I worked with the wild wolf research back in the day here in Wisconsin, the science was clear of what to do. The challenge was, how do we get people to understand what's going on? How do we get them to care? How do we get them to communicate about it? So that's kind of where my passion comes through. As Claire mentioned, here's just a quick overview of just a few of the places I've been featured in media, and I do a bunch of stuff, so it's supposed to make me sound important, but let's skip that. The idea is I've done this a while, and I really like doing what I do, and I've been lucky enough to get some profile because of it. And so what I'm going to try to do today is, with the little limited time and resources that we have, think about what can you get out of today that you can actually try to apply. And that's my big thing. Claire can speak to this, having been in some of my classes, is I appreciate theory. I appreciate the concepts behind theory, but if you can't apply and make the needle move, for me, it's worthless. I want to see something that makes some type of positive change in some way. So the things that I'm going to be sharing today are based on that philosophy, is what has worked, whether I've been working with a Starbucks, millions of dollars in budget, or small nonprofit organizations like one that's on campus that works with urban canid, which is coyote and fox research. They have literally no budget. What are the things that will make plans successful regardless of budget, regardless of any other variable, regardless of the number of people. And over the 20 some years of doing this, I've been able to find, what those simple things that you need to pay attention to are. And what I'm going to try to give you is enough to get going. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a plan that you need to start executing on. I know sometimes you're like, no, we got to plan everything out, especially in academia. And it's like, sometimes you just got to start. Yes, you want to plan, and you don't want to be, you don't want to not be thoughtful in some way, but at some time the planning has to stop, and you have to start executing. And so as we're going through this, what I want to do today is share one of my favorite quotes from one of my buddies. You guys might know him as Mr. Da Vinci. I know him as Leonardo. But his philosophy really hit home with me, which is that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And the idea behind this, and we're going to talk about this as we go along, is anybody in here familiar with the Pareto's principle? Anybody here ever hear of Vincenzo Pareto? You probably have. It's the 20-80 principle. So the principle is that 20% of your efforts will produce 80% of your results. So the question I'm always asking when I'm working with students or in business or on something myself is, what's the 20% that's going to move the needle? I don't have time running my own business and also teaching at the university to run the perfect marketing plan and strategy for my business because I wear too many hats. So what's the 20% that I need to know to get things going? And so we're gonna talk about that, and it comes down to what I want to impart today is this quote from a Rudyard Kipling poem, and it's that I have 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names were what and where and when and why and how and who. And that's essentially what the elements of a good strategy are. So this isn't rocket science, and sometimes people want to complicate things and try to make things be more sophisticated than they need to be. But really, these 6 concepts that we're going to go through are the cornerstone of a good marketing plan, whether you're marketing yourself, some of the examples that I'm going to show later on, or you're marketing or doing communications for a larger organization, an international organization. The concepts are still fundamentally the same. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the end in mind. And this is the mistake that most people make. And this is true in every area of life. I've got ADD, so I like study everything I can because I love studying and learning about everything. And regardless of field, regardless of industry, regardless of whether it's a goal that's personal or not, having a sense of where you're going is pretty important. And a lot of times when I'm working with science communication organizations or scientists or science labs or science organizations, say, why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve? And the most common answer is, well, we feel like we should do this. And I'm like, but that's not a good goal. It's like saying, I'm going to get healthy. Well, what does get healthy mean? It's variable depending on you as an individual. The challenges are going to be unique to you, what getting healthy means to you. One person, it might mean running an Ironman. One person, it might mean getting off of blood pressure medication. So the idea is when you sit down and you start thinking about this, a lot of people will underestimate the importance of this. But starting with this idea of the end in mind. So here are the 6 elements that we're going to talk about. The first one from that Kipling quote is the why. Why are we doing this? What are our organizational, individual, or business goals? Again, it sounds really simple, but most organizations say, well, I want to get people to know me more. Does that mean one more follower on Facebook or Instagram that's more people, right? But is that really what you want? No, what you might want, for example, if you're talking about COVID-19 communication, you might want thought leaders in rural communities in Wisconsin, for example, where there's very low adoption rates of the vaccine, to start talking about the vaccine. Why are we doing this? Because we want to help promote better understanding of what's going on. So the idea is the more specific we can get, the better. Why are we doing this? And then who are we going to try to communicate with? And we're going to dig into each of these a little bit more. And so I'm going to talk about the 20% again, but that 20% comes from the Pareto principle. Who is the 20% of our audience that if we connect with them, we're going to get as big a benefit as we can for whatever the reason might be. So for example, in my private business, when I was starting to try to build my profile, I identified the 20% as journalists. Why journalists? Because journalists are often looking for experts to be quick resources for stories that they might be doing, stories that they might be creating. Well, if I could get recognized as an expert by journalists, what are they going to do? They're going to publish me in their newspaper, their marketplace radio, whatever it is. And what's going to happen? I'm going to be seen as an expert by all of their fans and followers, right? So when I got on Marketplace Radio and USA Today and Sports Illustrated and all these other places, that was specifically because I was targeting journalists initially to say, hey, I want to connect with you. I'm willing to talk about science and science communication, or marketing and marketing communication. If you ever need help, let me know. And so the idea here is start thinking about who that is. Is it legislators? Is it people in community, et cetera? Then how are we going to do it? What's the process of actually being able to execute? So you can have the best plan in the world, but if you don't have the time, energy, or resources to execute on it, not going to happen. Then when do we do this? So a lot of times when I work with companies, they'll have like great plans. And you might know this yourself. I know I have done it in the past with New Year's resolutions. I have great training plans for getting ready for, triathlon or a CrossFit competition or whatever. And I didn't really use them. So the idea is, figuring out, when am I going to start to implement this into my day-to-day life? So when are you, as a part of your organization, going to start implementing the strategic communication component? Because it does take time. Where are you going to do it? What's going to happen online and offline? Is it going to be your website, social media? What social media platforms, email, etc.? Then what do we share? What are we going to be doing, and what are we going to be sharing, and what are we going to be posting? How are we going to be connecting? And then the last comes down to, how are we going to get it done? What tools are we actually going to be using to execute? And so what I'm going to try to do, and please reel me in if it comes down to it, if anybody getting lost, but the idea is I'm going to try to peel back and make this as uncomplicated as possible so that you can execute, but understanding that these are the components, these are the ingredients if you want to have a successful plan. And I can't see the chat, so if anybody sees a question pop up in the chat, can you please just let me know? All right, so the why here. So this is the most important element, and starting with the why and thinking about, what is our ultimate goal? So what I typically do with my clients is I say, and if we were doing this as a workshop, you would do this in real time right now, so you can do it on your own if you'd like. But what are 3 to 5 goals you have as to why you want to be marketing? Do you want to have better local support for something that you're doing? Do you want to have better statewide understanding and support? Do you want to get better publicity? Do you want to get, if it's an individual, better job offers, better career offers? What are the 3 to 5 reasons you might want to do this? I tend to keep it smaller. I tend to go more on the 3 side, but if it's a larger organization, I'll scale up to the 5. And the idea here is to just get some sense of what we're shooting for, because ultimately when it gets hard and we have other things calling for our attention, the why is what's going to remind us, hey, let's keep marketing, let's keep doing what we need to do. The problem that I run into with a lot of organizations, one of the big problems is they'll come up with a great plan, but then they'll get overwhelmed with other stuff and they'll forget why they're marketing, and they'll just give it up. They'll just stop doing it. And then they'll say, well, why don't people know more about this issue, whether it's climate change or GMOs, or pick whatever it is that you're interested in. And the reason is because you need to be consistent. And the thing that allows us to be consistent as organizations, when things get busy and other things call our attention, if we have a strong enough why driving why we put this communication plan together, we are going to execute on it. If we don't, it's going to just be like, oh, I've got 20 other things to do. I'm putting it on the back burner, and then what you're working on, what's important to you, doesn't get communicated about. The next is thinking about the who component. So who do you need to connect with? And on this one, I'll share an example at the end of some different ways that you can execute on this and start to identify who you specifically want to communicate with. But the idea here is, when you're thinking of your audience, you have to be thinking about value you are bringing to them. So when you stop and you think about this, the biggest mistake people make, and I've got example after example, I could go on forever with this, of organizations that had great information but didn't really think about who they were communicating with. And I'm going to share an example. I don't know if anybody here has heard of hip hop ed before, or hip hop STEM with Dr. Chris Emden. I'm really into that. Went to inner city school, so hip hop was something I grew up with. And one of the things that people started doing is Dr. Chris Emden, who's at Columbia, starting to use hip hop to teach science. And the idea was his goal was to get kids in urban populations who didn't normally get access to STEM and STEM careers to start getting interested in it. Why? Because he wanted to see more representation. So that was his why. The who was then those students. And what he had to do was he couldn't just go to them and say, hey, get involved in science. It's really cool. Somebody like Bill Nye the Science Guy didn't relate to them because what was he? He was an old white guy in a lab coat, right? A white lab coat. So it didn't really resonate. So the idea with the who then is you need to start thinking of who you're trying to persuade. So this is one of my favorite all-time quotes. It's, if you wish to persuade me, so think of your audience, who it is that you would want to be talking to. If you wish to persuade me, you must think my thoughts. So you need to be thinking about what's important to me. You need to be feeling my feelings, and you need to speak my words. So the example I gave earlier of wolves and people in Milwaukee, well, why would they care? They got other things going on to be worrying about wolf restoration in the state of Wisconsin. So what could I do to make it relevant? And the example of Chris Emden, what we'll see is he started thinking about these kids, and he's like, what are they thinking about? Where their urban culture, he's in New York City. He works a lot in the Harlem schools in Harlem. And what are they thinking about? They're thinking about things that are related to culturally relevant, things that are contemporary. And so he started, what else? What are they feeling? Well, they're feeling, different types of struggles. What kind of words are they using? And there's urban vernacular. So he said, well, what if we start doing science contests? And I'll share an example. It's super cool, where they do hip hop spoken word science contests in New York City. It's called Science Genius. Super cool. But the idea was that by using concepts, using words, thinking about what the audience was feeling, in this case, young people and growing up in an urban area, he was able to connect with them. So when we're thinking of our audience with the who, we want to be thinking about that. We want to not just say, oh, my audience is legislators who are influencing policy regarding whatever the, for example, something like wetland restoration. Well, then you need to be thinking about what's the legislator's life like? What are they thinking about? What are they concerned about? What types of language do they use? So thinking of framing your messages to them in ways that are relevant versus if you're trying to talk to somebody in a local community and get some local community activists involved in wetland restoration. The language, the words, etc., might be different. But what I often will say to people with this is this quote, if you really think about it, I think it's pretty powerful, because if you learn to think like and talk like anybody you're communicating with, this is empathy, right? It's all it is. And the question I often ask people is, who said this? And I get all kinds of guesses. And the answer is Cicero. So Cicero said this, Cicero said this 2,000 years ago. Why do I bring that up? Because the essence of a good strategic plan hasn't changed. People want to be heard, they want to be recognized, and they want to be spoken to, not spoken with, not spoken at. So a lot of times in science communication, we'll come in, and this I was mentioning before we started, I work in a lot of indigenous communities, and there's a big disconnect in a lot of indigenous communities in the United States between the Western science and native traditional science. And the reason is, when Western scientists would come in, oftentimes they would come in and let us teach you. We're going to show you. And it's like very condescending, right? And so the idea was that created disconnect and discord. And so we've done some really cool things working with indigenous communities in Wisconsin on this. But the idea was starting to look at it and say, hey, let's work together rather than we're going to help you. How can we help you? Things like that. So when you're thinking of the who, so the idea here is to be thinking about that Pareto principle. Who is the 20% of your audience that you would want to connect with? So for example, what I had mentioned was the journalists, and thinking of journalists for me, helping me build my profile. And what you can do then is you can do homework and start looking at, who are some of these key audiences. There's a great article that I recommend you read. My students in my social media class have to read it, and it's an article called 1,000 True Fans. It's written by Kevin Kelly, and his whole thesis is built around the idea of putting together a business. And this can apply very much to nonprofit organizations, to science organizations, etc. But his philosophy is that if you have a true fan is somebody who shares your content on social media, somebody who will talk about your organization to their friends and their family and really champion. The example that he uses in his article is like if you were in a band, or if it was a band and you were a true fan of that band, and if it was playing within 500 miles of where you live, you jump in a car and drive to go see it. So you become a fan. Well, if you only have 1,000 true fans and you get those 1,000 true fans to spend $100 a year with you, what you end up getting is a gross revenue of $100,000. So his idea is that when you do this, what you can do is maybe you're not looking to earn $100,000, but maybe what you're looking to do is to build a bigger audience. If identify who my true fans might be, and we'll do an exercise in a little bit, that allows me to create something that is scalable and allows me to reach and connect and have benefit to the communications I'm doing. And then the creating personas, which is essentially just start thinking like, who are my audience targets? So if I'm speaking to a college student who's a graduate student, they have different concerns than somebody who might be a student in high school. So what are some things that people might be looking for in terms of my audience? The more I can create a persona, basically a persona is like a profile of what an individual might look like. It's like a caricature of what a typical audience member might look like. And what that does is that helps you start to say, okay, when I'm creating something, would what I'm creating resonate with that person? So that's not the most important component. The Pareto and the 1,000 true fans are where I start first. And then what you do as far as homework is just start thinking about who are 5 audiences that are valuable to you that you could be valuable to as well. So a lot of times in science communication, a lot of times in the science arena, it is people who might provide funding, and it's media people who cover science topics. And sometimes they're going to be traditional media. Sometimes they might be bloggers or people who are prominent on social media. Maybe they're not a traditional journalist, but those are very, very common in the science world and science arena. And then the idea next is how will you execute? So thinking about how much time and resources do I have to execute on my strategy? So one of the things that I often will do with my clients is it's like, let's not build a perfect strategy. Let's build a strategy that you are going to execute on. So instead of saying, well, let's take the New Year's example. The number one New Year's resolution is for people to get healthy, which is very ambiguous and doesn't really say anything. So what people will do is they'll buy these plans and they'll, I'm going to eat perfectly, I'm going to sleep, and I'm going to get up at the right time. I'm going to drink exactly this. I'm going to run this, and then I'm going to exercise this. And they've got this great plan laid out. But then January 2nd or January 3rd, what happens? Life, right? And suddenly your perfectly laid out plan doesn't get executed. And then for me, I end up feeling guilt, like, oh, I should be doing this, but you know. So what I start my clients out with is saying, what do you really have time for? If all you have time for is walking 1 mile a day and not changing anything else to get healthy, do that. You're going to be better off ultimately than not doing it. But instead, what we tend to do, especially in academia and especially in the business world, is we try to come up with perfect plans. But I always start by saying, how much time do you think you have? Do you have 2 hours a week? If you have 2 hours a week, let's figure out what's going to be most important to execute in that 2 hours a week. You have 10 hours a week, great. If you have 1 hour a week, there's always something you can be doing, but you need to be aware of like what's realistic for me to execute on. And I have yet to meet somebody, and I'll happily trade lives with anybody for a little while if there's anybody who's like, too much spare time, I just have nothing to do. I'd really, you know. So if anybody has that, hit me up. That's a Don fun thing, right, Claire? Be happy to trade spots with you. And then the next element of the strategy is, when will you be sharing out content? So what I do with all of my clients is I think like Hallmark. What the heck does that mean? Well, first of all, I am envious of Hallmark because they make up fake holidays, and then they get you to buy cards for those fake holidays, right? And so you end up spending money for stuff, and then, you know, It's like, can't I just make you fold a sheet of paper and send it to you? No, you got to buy a Hallmark card, right? So you spend $6 or whatever it is for a card, which is crazy now. But the idea here is that Hallmark, the next big holiday here in the United States is Father's Day. Are they stressed and strained right now about creating Father's Day cards? No. They probably created them last year in like August or September. Why were they able to do that? Because they know that every June, Father's Day is going to come up. So they have lead time to create a marketing message for Father's Day. One is Valentine's Day, for example. It's in February. So are they in January and February working on Valentine's Day card? No, they're planning way ahead of time. And by planning way ahead of time, what they're able to do is they're able to put some of their marketing messages together. And they often recycle those messages from year to year. But they put those messages together ahead of time so that when certain times of year come up, they have content ready to share. What does that mean for us? What I do with my clients is I sit down and I say, like, let's take the UW-Madison, for example. What happens where I teach? What happens every September? School starts, right? So every September, we know that we could be putting out content about the majors in the science communication world where we can start trying to get people interested, right? What do we know happens every May? People graduate. So what am I going to do? I might put out stuff and start pre-planning and pre-creating stuff about graduation. It could be start of the semester when it comes after winter break. We do semesters at UW-Madison. So the idea here is you can look at, in virtually every industry I've ever worked in has cycles to it. So thinking about what are some things I could pre-plan? What are some things that are going on? I often will use, are there conferences coming up? Are there workshops coming up? And do those workshops and conferences happen at the same time of year? And a lot of times they do. So every year we'll do a series, like let's say, for example, it's the AAAS conference. We'll have 10 things we're looking forward to at AAAS coming up in 2020, 2021, 2022. So every leading up to the AAAS conference, we'll have a series of pieces of content about the 10 things we're looking forward to that are going to be coming up. Then what we do after the conference every year is we would have 10 key takeaways we had from this year's conference. So what does that do? Every year now, I have a lot of content. I have 20 pieces of content leading into that conference and leading after that conference. So that makes it easier for me to know what to be creating as well. So a lot of times just looking at your own industry and looking at, okay, what themes can we create? Could we do it around cycles or quarters or whatever is going on? The New Year's is an easy one. Like at the end of the year, a lot of times we'll say, 10 innovations or 10 discoveries that we had this year, or 10 interesting things that happened in 2021. And then in January or late December, we'll have 10 things we're looking forward to in 2022. And, so the idea is that by being thoughtful, you can come up with content rather than having to be like, oh, I don't know what to do and I don't know what to say, etc., which is a very common thing that stops people. And then the where comes into, where do we want to be most active? It is impossible to be on every platform doing everything. It is not possible at all. So pick, what do you want to do? I want to focus on my website for a quarter or 6 months or a year. I want to focus on maybe one of our social media accounts instead. And we want to get more proactive with Twitter or Instagram stories, or example I'll show you in a little bit, TikTok, or could it be email? So I do this when I'm picking the where with clients or organizations. It is twofold. One, where is the audience? Is our audience on that platform? So for example, if I'm trying to talk to high school students and trying to get high school Indigenous students really interested in science and science communication, should I be on LinkedIn? Absolutely not, right? It's not a platform that works. Where should I most likely be? Well, I'd have to do a little research, but right now, Snapchat is probably more popular in those communities than TikTok. TikTok might be more popular in other young communities, but though that helps me know where to go. Then what I look at is, do I have the capacity to be on that platform? And if not, what do I need to do to get good at TikTok? What do I need to learn to get on Snapchat, whatever it might be? And just figure out what are the basics that I need to know to be good and present to execute. Next up then is the what. And the what is what content should I be sharing? And I just mentioned one of the ideas of looking at that Hallmark calendar. But what I do with all of my clients is there's basically, I sit them down and I'll say, and think of this for yourself. Why do you go online to learn about stuff? Why do you go online, period? Is it to sit and have information you're not looking for presented to you? No. You're looking for stuff from family, from friends, things that entertain you, news, etc. So what you have to be thinking about is, how could I be something that is of value to my audience that fits what they're going online for? And this is where it's just simply being helpful. How can I provide help to my audience? So sometimes help is defined under being educational content. Bill Nye the Science Guy and Neil deGrasse Tyson got popular because of that. They also were entertaining. So they added that entertaining component. And then, is it enriching? Does it make my life better? Does it make me help understand how to do something more effectively? So a couple of years ago, I don't know if anybody remembers when you could only do 6-second videos. I'm spacing the name. What platform was that? Anybody remember?
Vine?
Vine. That's it. Yeah, exactly. And so there was a science channel that grew up with 6-second science experiments, and it was really, really cool. It was educational, it was entertaining, but then it was also enriching, because then I could watch those and go and do these experiments with my kids. So you start thinking about what would be helpful. And so what I do is I say, okay, if you go back to one of the earlier exercises, we said pick 3 to 5 audiences. So 3 to 5 audiences. Then what are the top 5 questions that those audiences have? So if I'm looking at college students versus, I'm thinking of college, but think of parents when it comes to selecting a college. What are some of their questions? What type of jobs are available when my student graduates? How much does it cost? Is this place safe? Etc. Think of what a high school senior is concerned about when it comes to learning about college, right? They're like, yeah, is it going to be fun? Am I going to have opportunities? What's the social life like? What's the academic life like? So those 2 audiences, I might both be trying to recruit to UW-Madison to get students to come to UW-Madison, but the 5 questions the parents are going to have are probably going to be different than 5 questions a senior in college are going to have. And so by breaking your audience down, you can start to come up with those questions. And then those questions are what you base your social media or website or email content around, answering what those questions are, thinking about, what can we do to provide that information so that we become a trustworthy media source for them. And then I'll show you one quick idea of this. So what I do is, when I'm working with my students and clients, we'll often do this concept called the topic wheel. So let me quick show it to you and explain it to you. So in the center is me and my organization. So we list out what our goal is. Our goal is to get more students to come and participate in science communication at the UW-Madison, as an example. So then I think about, what are some subtopics of science communication that I could get students interested in? Well, there could be topic 1 could be environmental issues. Topic 2 could be human health issues. Topic 3 could be discoveries. I'm making these up off the top of my head, but the idea is I try to get about 6 topic ideas. And this is the idea here, is it's going to help me identify who to connect with and what content to create. So let's pick topic 1. So topic 1, I'm going to say environmental communication about different topics affecting humans and the environment. So that's topic 1. What I'm going to do then is, the 3 lines that come off of that are 3 influential people or organizations in that arena. So it might be Jane Goodall Institute. It might be, I'm spacing different, E.O. Wilson. It might be the National Park Service. It might be National Academies of Science, something like that. But the idea is, by picking a topic, I can start to see that I can do different focal points for my communication to keep it from getting boring for me. But at the same time, what I can do is, when I pick each individual topic, I want to start identifying people in the community I might want to connect with so that I could start amplifying my message and start amplifying my reach, and at the same time help them out. So what I do again is I take each of these topic areas, and so one, like topic number 4 might be good science communication strategies. Topic number 5 might be social media and science communication. Topic 6 might be long form communication and science communication. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sub-segment, kind of niche down different topic areas, and then identify who are target accounts and who are target connections. So I think of it this way too. It's like, let's say, for example, we're going to a big conference, a big convention, and we get ahead of time who's all going to be there. We might strategically go through the booklet that says what the topics are going to be, what the talks are going to be, and identify the talks we want to go to by topic area. And then who are the people that are having those talks? And we might try to run into them, right? We might try to stop at their booth, or we might attend their talk, whatever it is. So it's very, very similar to that. The beauty of this, though, is that it can be done digitally. So here's a quick example of a gentleman, and I use this in my digital marketing class. But so here were 6 areas where he wanted to get known. Topic area 1 was he wanted to learn more about and make connections in the digital marketing world. So he identified 3 big thought leaders that if he connected with them or people in his community, he would start to build traction for his strategic communication campaign. He has one then for social media marketing. And you'll notice with the social media marketing, there's one person, Dennis Yu, who is both in digital marketing and in social media marketing. So sometimes these things will overlap. But the idea here is what this allowed him to start to do was to think about topics he would want to share content about, talk about, etc. But then also to identify people, or oftentimes it's accounts. So it isn't just individuals, but accounts that he would want to connect with to help his strategic communication plan become more valuable. So again, the idea is you spend some time doing some research and checking that out. Do we have any questions, by the way? I should have asked that. Making sure that this is making sense, and I'm cruising through a lot of information relatively fast. So. All right, so what I want to do next is I want to share some examples with you all to just show how this can work. So I'm gonna reshare my screen over here. I think this is it. Let me just make sure I have the right one. Too many tabs open. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to share, are you all seeing my browser? So the first one is this example where there's a campaign going on right now in the so I work a lot with organizations that do stuff with underrepresented populations and the environment. So right now there's this big thing going on called Blackburners Week. I don't know if anybody has paid attention to it, but what I did is that I went on Twitter, I did a search for trending hashtags, and the hashtag Blackburners Week is trending big time right now. So it's on, you can see here, it's on Nova, PBS, it's on Discovery, it's being shared all over. So what I wanted to do with one of my friends and colleagues is he is Black and he's a birder. So we started looking at, well, what could he do to start trying to promote in the Madison area, getting underrepresented youth involved in birding. So we started following this hashtag, started looking at who some big names are. I don't know if anybody in here is a birder. I'm not. I love being out and watching birds, but I don't know a whole lot about it. But there's this gentleman whose name is Sibley, I think, and he has like he's like a Bill Nye of the birding world. So anyway, my buddy Dexter started producing this channel, Wisco Birder. Wisco Birder is all about teaching people about beauty and diversity of birds with his camera, being out in the field as a Black man. And he's got these cool videos that so he has these fun little videos that he does, and then he goes out and he takes pictures of birds and identifies birds. Well, anyway, he's just got from this gentleman, Sibley, who's like again, the Bill Nye of the science guy world, just got a direct message from him last night. Oh my gosh, I love what you're doing with Blackburners Week. I'm telling everybody to start following you. I think what you're doing is incredible. The Wisconsin Autobahn Society reached out to him and said, hey, can we do an interview with you? Can we do a feature with you? And all these different organizations are now reaching out to him, both in the Madison area, statewide and nationally, to start talking about how do we get people, young Black men in his case in particular, involved in birding. So the idea here is that by starting to do a little bit of research, the topic area he wanted to get involved in was birding. And then one of his other topic areas was getting underrepresented populations involved in birding, especially what happened after what happened last year in New York City. If you remember, there was an incident in Central Park that happened with a gentleman who was a Black birder, starting to say, hey, no, everybody can bird and we can all be involved. And so anyway, his example, he's just literally in the throes right now of using and talking about his passion for birds and ornithology to talk about what's going on. So
he wants to help me find the hairy woodpecker because I can hear him. Do y'all hear that? He is so loud. There he is.
So he does little things like this. So his audience, because it's younger people, is using Reels and Instagram stories and TikTok. But he's also now starting to get publicity and being highlighted in a variety of different areas. So that's one example. The other example that I mentioned, here's another example of a gentleman I'm on a panel with in a couple of weeks. Maynard is his name. So he has Hip Hop Science MD. So he's a medical doctor who wanted to start talking about hip hop and science, similar to the Dr. Chris Emden that I was mentioning before. And if you go in here, he's got all kinds of really cool videos where he explores all different topics related to science, not just medical stuff, but he's got stuff.
Do you believe in urban myths or urban legends? Mythical creatures such as Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster are all rooted in science. Bigfoot, a tall, hairy ape.
So you can go and you can check out these channels on your own, but the idea is his strategic communication plan was to start making science more accessible to everybody and to start tapping into kind of like the Lin-Manuel Miranda when he did Hamilton. Like, let's tap into that movement and let's see if we can start to get people involved and make science cool. And it isn't just for, the quote unquote smart kids, which is one of those myths of what intelligence is, etc. The other example, yep.
Sorry to barge in. I think we lost your screen share for a moment.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So you guys didn't get to see that?
We saw a tweet, but once the video started playing, there we go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is his YouTube channel. So he's got all kinds of cool YouTube content. And this originally, I believe he may have started it out as a part of an organization and then broke it off as his own individual. So this can be done definitely within an organization as well. You seeing his website homepage? Okay. Then the other one is Hip Hop Ed that I mentioned earlier. So this is part of the university or Columbia University's, I forget what they call their teaching school. But this is that example where organizationally trying to start to, whoops, no idea why that happened. Let's see if it pops up. There we go. So this is now a nationwide, and it's an organization, like says a nonprofit organization that is all about using hip hop, spoken word, and graffiti art to teach about sciences. So another example, the last example that I'll share is this is the student that I was mentioning earlier. This is a student of mine who is a dietitian. I was mentioning it earlier before we started going. Started the recording. So this was a student of mine in class 2 years ago. She is a dietitian working on her master's in dietetics now. And in my class, she started an Instagram channel talking about nutrition. And she ended up getting about 600 followers on Instagram. But what she ended up doing is she ended up narrowing down her topic area. And instead of talking just about nutrition, she started talking about nutrition for young women and young girls who are dealing with eating disorders, because she had dealt with an eating disorder. So she started creating content primarily on TikTok because it was what she liked and it's where she thought the audience was. And you can see here she has she started this channel not that long ago, 176,000 followers on TikTok. And she has 913,000 likes. Several of her videos, I mean, if you look at the average video, 20,000 20,000 views, 4,000 views, 8,000 views. She has a couple that have over 1 million views. And the idea here was that when she got her targeted audience more narrow and her goal more narrow, it wasn't just to teach people about nutrition, it was to teach people, in particular young women, her audience, and young girls and their families, how to help people have better, more positive, healthy relationships with food. The more she narrowed that down, the more she was able to go. And she's got great stuff. Are you seeing the TikTok channel?
Body image. Today's topic, vacation. Vacation was such a stressful time for me when I had my eating disorder, because I was constantly worried about what I was going to be wearing, what I was going to be eating, where we were going to be taking pictures, like anything.
So great stuff. So I highly recommend checking out her stuff. But what she's doing there is she's saying, what are the questions that I had when I went on vacation when I was struggling with my eating disorder? And she made that into content. But if you go through her channel, it is so fun because she's just an amazing person. But being able to start leveraging, okay, I narrowed my topic, I narrowed my audience, I know why I'm on these things. I started putting my plan together, and she's been able to see some incredible, incredible success. All right. Oops, looks like we got a couple of chats in there. 1,000 true fans. Oh, you mentioned that you lost the screen there. Okay. All right. And so what I would recommend is going through some of those examples, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, because each situation does have some unique elements. But again, every project I've worked on, every single solitary project I've worked on in my 20 plus years of doing this, these 6 principles have all been, if they've been addressed, the probability of being successful with the outreach work, the communication work you're trying to do goes up significantly. If you ignore these and just like, yeah, let's just start throwing stuff up, you know, cool, let's just do it. Chances are highly likely you're not only going to be unsuccessful, but you're going to burn out and get frustrated as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much, Don. This has been a really nice refresher and a really great overview of just, I'm ready to implement some stuff for SAI, especially. So.
Cool. Excellent.
If
and
people
that's
would
one
like
of the things,
to,
yeah.
I was going to say, if people would like to throw their questions in the chat, I'm comfortable reading them out. If not, feel free to raise your hand. We can do them. And you can unmute yourself and talk that way as well.
Everybody might be like, well, it's Saturday.
I have a question to kick us off. So there are times when our intended audience is very different than who we are as individuals. Right. Do you have any tips or any strategies on how you get to know an audience? For example, if I, being a 25-year-old female, would like to connect with preschool students, I don't interact with preschool students very often. What are some ways that and strategies that I could connect with that audience more?
So the way I do it is pretty simple. So we can get more sophisticated if you want, but I will go to Google and say top 10 websites, top 10 social media accounts for preschool families or preschoolers or preschool teachers to follow. Then what I'll do is I will spend time digging into, when I get those search results, who those accounts are, who's most active. Like, so let's say it's the top 10 websites. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend time reviewing those 10 websites, and I'm going to look to see who's keeping the content most up to date. I'm going to then check out their social channels to see who has the most activity. And that's going to give me a sense, first of all, of where the community might be. So out of those top 10, maybe I find 2 accounts that I really, really like. What I'm going to do then is see who they are following and who is following them. And I'll start to find, preschoolers aren't going to be online doing this, right? But I'm going to find the people who are connected with them who are. And that is the beauty of social, is that there's definite major downsides to social. But one of the upsides is if I spend a little bit of time, I can find the answer. So I can find people, I can find connections. So for example, with Monica, the dietitian I just shared, her initial thought was when we started classes, well, people don't talk about nutrition and dietetics online. I said, really? I said, yep. I said, well, let's go do a Google search. And this happens, I had a nuclear physicist 2 semesters ago too, same thing. Nuclear scientists aren't on social media, they're not online. Okay, let's do a Google search. Top topic, or top accounts, or top people talking about this. And they're like, I mean, literally you can see the light bulbs going off when we do this exercise in class, because people are like, I had no idea. So to become empathetic to an audience like that, to start that's the best thing to do, is to do some searches, find the top channels that are being followed. And that'll start to give you some insight into what are the concerns, what's the language that's being used, what are the things that people are worried about, because we don't all fit, we fit pretty narrow, each of us individually, audience. And so the example I'll often give is one of my very first private projects that I got as a freelancer was building out a campaign for women who were 35 to 45 years old in a particular group. Well, I was 22 years old. I don't fit this. And so what did I do is this was back in the day, I went to a bookstore and I started looking through all of the women's magazines. Oprah was the main one. And I looked at all of the ads that were in there. What were the ads? What were they saying? What did they look like? Who was Oprah referencing? Who was, whatever the other magazine, who were the experts that they were profiling? And that gave me a sense and idea of how to start gathering some of that research, so I could get a better idea of who my audience is and be able to speak to them more coherently.
That's awesome. Google is our friend always.
Yeah. And like I said, every semester I get that I have it. I'm teaching right now in summer school, and I just had another student who's in microbiology. Like, microbiologists don't use the web and social media. And so we literally did the exercise I'm just talking. She and I did it one-on-one, and she was like, I had no idea. So it really can be that simple.
Any other questions?
I'll talk about dogs, I'll talk about wolves, whatever. Sunflower sleeping in the background here. She's all lazed out.
I can jump in with maybe, no, okay. I can jump in with maybe one more that I think you maybe partially answered with Claire's question, but maybe there might be some nuance there, I'm not sure. You addressed this a little bit. There seems to be a paradigm shift among a lot of the science communication community about the way that we're framing our interactions with our audiences, which again, you talked about like working together with them. Or like another way I've heard it phrased is figuring out what we can actually learn from them instead of prescribing our own ideas of what their needs are onto them. But I was wondering if you have any specific strategies or anything for beginning these types of reframed conversations, especially with groups who have been, like historically marginalized or harmed by the science institution, but also in general.
Oh, that is a fantastic question. Number one strategy that I've used time and time and time again, works every single time because it's done in a genuine way, is reshare their content. Talk about their stuff. And what that does is, so what I do when I'm like working with my students is I say 70 to 80% of the time when you're starting out, curate, and let's pick Twitter just because it's an easy one, retweet with quotes other people's stuff. Shine a light on them. Hey, if you want to be learning about what's going on in indigenous communities in Wisconsin, make sure to follow Marvin Defoe. Marvin talks about X, Y, and Z, and I retweet him. What does that start to do? That starts to say, I'm not the expert. I'm just sharing what I'm finding. of people who are in these communities. Like my buddy Dexter, who I just shared with the Wisco-Birder. You know, he's got background that I don't have, and I can't relate to my audiences in some ways that he can. Same with Monica. So what do? I share their content out. And what that shows is if I'm sharing it out, I'm willing to put my name on it and say, I believe in this stuff enough to share it out, that what they start to do, and this is again happened time and time and time again, is these top people in the world will reach out to me and say, Don, thank you for sharing that out. I appreciate it. I see you've been doing that for a while. And then if I reach out to them, I reach out by saying, what can I do to collaborate with you? Instead of saying, hey, I want to be able to come to your reservation and I want to check out this and I want to be able to do that. How do I do that? You know, so instead of, I ask, what can I do to help? So very similar to what you said. So just say, you know, would you be willing to do an interview that we're going to put up on our website? Because I'd love to have your perspective on this. And we see you as an expert, you know, talking about climate change and wild rice beds in the state of Wisconsin. And that has been time and time again, it's been incredibly valuable. And the best part of it as a communicator is it's taught me so much of what I don't know, right? Because I'm getting to hear and learn from other people's perspectives, and that's helped me be humble. And that has allowed me to make like incredible connections. So when I'm on Marketplace Radio or This American Life or in whatever, Lester Holt show a couple weeks ago, it's like, how did you get there? Well, it's because I helped a lot of people out. You know, so that's the best way to do it. Start talking about other people's work. Start talking about the impact they're having, and be an amplifier for them. Help them get exposed. Be one of their 1,000 true fans. Does that answer? Rosario, you've got a question? I like your turtle, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks for the talk. This was really helpful. One of the questions that I had was how to frame some of your communication. So I guess I'll just be a lot more specific. So I've been trying to recruit submissions to my site on Twitter, because that seems to be a space where there's a lot of scientists and there's a lot of publications.
Yes.
And people share their work all the time. So I kind of like retweet people and then try to contact them to see if they'll submit. I've been struggling to find different ways to ask the same question, I guess, because I have, you know, I can like send out one tweet and I've asked this one question, but then if I want to ask again, you know, several weeks later, or, you know, try to pull in other people, I'm struggling to find new ways to do that, I guess.
So that's a great question. So the strategy that I will use, remember, Twitter happens so fast. I mean, social period happens so fast that it's so easy to have things go past us. And if you're ever trying to reach out to somebody, this is where that Cicero quote always comes to my mind, is like, I'm super busy. I'd love to help everybody out, but I just simply can't. So what does somebody have to do? Sometimes they just have to reach out 3 or 4 times. That's not that I'm trying to be big time them or anything. It's just, I'm really busy, right? I've got kids, I've got a life, I've got a business, you know, so sometimes it's a matter, like what I try to do is I try to get on their radar slowly over time. And over time can be 2 weeks. It doesn't need to be, you know, 2 years. But the idea is sharing out their stuff enough times that they start to see that you're not just trying to get something from them for them to participate or whatever, but you're actually providing value back to them. Because I've worked with a number of like big name people. And people, the way that I got to know virtually all of these people is I did 2 things. One is I shared their content regularly. And then the second is I sent them a private video message or public video message on Twitter, just saying why I appreciated what they were doing so much and that people should follow them. What that did is that what showed, instead of me just coming up and saying, one interaction, I'm going to quick meet you, but I'm really only in this interaction to get something from you. It proved that, you know, I was in it for more than that's just that. And I mean, you know, it's got kind of like that. I always jokingly will say with my daughters, like, it's like that person who just, you can see they're walking up to everybody asking them for a date. You know, they don't care who it is. It's just like, can I have a date? Can I have a date? Can I have a date? You know, it's like, no, get away. And it's the same thing in business where it's like, I want something from you. I want something from you. I want something from you. So those bigger names, a lot of times that's all people do to them. So when somebody comes to them and sends them a direct message and says, dear Jane Goodall, I got to have lunch with Jane Goodall, which was super cool, but that's another story for another time. Just what you did in terms of being able to work and being willing to work with the oil companies in Africa to not only preserve habitat, but to preserve lifestyle for the people in those communities. I just really moved me. I really appreciate, you may have heard thank you before, but it just really inspired me. Thanks. Those types of things are the little pieces, I call it social currency, the little investment I'm making to show to you that I'm not coming to you just to get something. I'm coming to build a connection with you. And organizations can do it as well. But does that make sense? So like retweeting them multiple times, and then a lot of times my strategy will be retweeting a bunch of their stuff a lot of times, and then doing a tweet or two of, hey, if you aren't following Rosario, you should be following her, and here's why. And then sending you that thank you video. And I always do it. I'm going to qualify. I hope I probably don't have to, but I always qualified. I'm doing it genuinely. I'm not doing it because, I want to, get something from this person. But when people can tell if you're doing it genuinely, and if you do, it is incredible how many connections I've been able to make. Hope that's helpful.
It was. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Priscilla asked a question. When presenting about a project or organization, would you suggest we frame it with the same six? Yes, you can. So like today, I had to frame this as though, okay, I'm speaking to people who are in the science arena, who are interested in learning how to communicate about science. So I've specifically brought up the target audience, but I wouldn't necessarily, like when I'm going in and I customize literally every presentation I do to who the audience is. I'll have the same or similar content structure, but I'm thinking about what examples can I share with them that are going to be relevant to them, that's going to be meaningful to them, that's going to help them be like, wow, that was helpful. So sometimes I don't like list out the 6 questions necessarily, but I use them as my framework for creating any presentation. So some of it will be like who the audience is for a presentation like this, or I'm doing 2 more later this week. I'm not talking about who the audience is as I'm presenting. That's implied in the examples I'm using and in the stories I'm going to use, that type of thing. Does that make sense? And does that help address the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but otherwise I say, who are they? Why are they here? So listing out, well, what are we going to be trying to do? Well, we're going to try to talk about 6 things you can do today that you could take away right now and use. So at the start of a presentation, why are they here and what are they looking to get? Say that to them, because then they'll recognize, oh, Priscilla gets why I'm here. She's not here to just talk about how cool she thinks she is or her research is, which unfortunately a lot of academics, I shouldn't pick on academics, but I'm going to, will do. But think about, why did somebody show up? They're giving me their time today. Why are they showing up? And what questions do they have that if I could answer, they would walk away and be like, wow, that was worth my time. So I use those questions big time as a model for when I'm putting together the content structure, whether it's a blog post, social media post, or a presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Don, this has been absolutely incredible and great to hear from you again. If fellows and friends have other questions, can we reach out to you on, I see you have posted your info.
Yep. My goal is to pass on what's been passed on to me and build an army of people doing things for good and trying to make the world a better place. And as Pollyanna as that might sound to people, all of my heroes, whether it's Dr. King or Gandhi, whoever, they all did it. So yeah, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to help if I can.
Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you everybody for joining us. Don, if I could get your slides, I'd be happy to send them around too, because there's so much, and I'd love to share these exercises with others who couldn't attend and hopefully connect science and society even more now.
Yeah, absolutely. We got our work cut out for us, but and it's cool that we're all at the forefront. So thank you all too for not only your time, for doing what you're doing, because we're all working to be positive agents for change. So appreciate you.
Awesome. Enjoy
right.
the rest of your day, everybody, and
Yeah,
we will be in touch soon.
Take care, everyone.